A sickening crime. 6-year-old Bella Fontanelle killed and stuffed in a 10-gallon chlorine bucket.
This is a senseless type incident that happened.
She walked into the Harahan police station just after midnight. Hair messy, clothes loose, no signs of injury, but something about her looked off. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't crying. She just looked like someone who hadn't slept. Someone who was running on fumes or hiding something heavy. The officers at the desk asked how they could help. She didn't give her name. Instead, she quietly asked, "Can I make a phone call? There's a family problem." When they pressed for more, she shut down. "I don't want to talk about it." It wasn't enough to arrest her. It wasn't even enough to hold her, so they let her sit, called an ambulance, and had her transported for a psychological evaluation. Nothing stood out, not yet. What no one in that station knew, not the officers, not the EMTs, not even the woman herself, was that this midnight visit was only the beginning. By morning, her name would be all over the news. And the family problem she refused to explain? It would turn out to be the brutal of a 6-year-old girl. A child who trusted her, lived with her, and called her family. Bella Fontanelle's body would be discovered just hours later, stuffed inside a plastic bucket, left like garbage on the lawn of her biological mother's home. And that same woman from the station? She would be identified as Bunnock Hannah Landon, her father's girlfriend, the woman Bella had been living with for years. Bella Fontanelle was born in April 2017. She was 6 years old, shy, gentle, and always smiling. The kind of child who didn't talk much in large groups, but once she opened up, her warmth pulled everyone in. She gave hugs freely and loved dressing up like her favorite Disney princesses. Her favorite color was red, and she wore it often, especially when she was excited about school or holidays. She was in kindergarten at St. Matthew the Apostle School in River Ridge, Louisiana. Teachers described her as sweet, kind-hearted, and always thoughtful of others. Her parents, Michael Fontanelle and Jennifer Zeladon, had met years earlier in college. Both had earned accounting degrees. Both became CPAs. For a while, they built a life together and had 2 daughters, Bella and her older sister Aria. But not long after Bella was born, Michael and Jennifer's marriage ended. The divorce wasn't easy, but they managed to co-parent the best they could. They lived just 2 blocks apart in Harahan, Louisiana, a quiet, tight-knit suburb of New Orleans. Bella and Aria split time between their parents' homes. Week to week, day to day, they moved back and forth between their mother's house on Sedgefield Drive and their father's place on Donnellan Drive. The routine wasn't perfect, but it worked, at least for a while. But by 2018 or 2019, a new woman had moved into Michael's home, Bunnock Hannah Landon. Some knew her as Bunnock Lim, others as Hannah Landon, but she had a history that stretched beyond Harahan. She'd previously lived in Mobile, Alabama, and had once been married to a man named Donald Dwayne Landon. Public records showed they wed in 2013. She also had a son who lived in Florida, though the nature of that relationship was unclear. According to some sources, Hannah had little to no contact with him. However, in Harahan, she presented herself as a stepmother figure to Bella and Aria. She attended events, she took photos, she dressed the girls in matching outfits and even dressed to match herself. On the outside, she tried to build the image of a happy blended family. But behind closed doors, things looked different. Michael's family didn't trust her. His mother, Barbara Fontanelle, found her unsettling. Relatives described her as distant, controlling, and never truly connected to anyone in the family, even after years of being around. There was also tension between Hannah and Jennifer, and it wasn't subtle. Hannah reportedly showed signs of jealousy, especially toward the girl's mother. She didn't like that Jennifer was still involved in the children's lives. She didn't like that the girls, especially Bella, still adored her. And Bella eventually confided to a school counselor. She said she didn't like going to her father's house. She said Hannah was mean to her and her sister. There were no visible injuries, but there were signs of emotional discomfort. Enough that people around her started to grow concerned. Still, the custody arrangement continued. Hannah stayed in the house, and for the next few years, the tension grew unchecked, until it finally broke. It happened on June 8, 2021, a warm summer evening at the Riverside Country Club in Harahan. Bella and Aria were competing in a swim meet, surrounded by parents, siblings, and other kids. Jennifer Zeledin was there, standing near the pool, waiting for a chance to congratulate her daughters. She'd always been present for the girls' milestones, swim meets, recitals, school events. She made the effort. That day was no different. But as she walked up to Bella and Aria to hug them, someone stepped in the way. It was Hannah Landon. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't supportive. She blocked Jennifer, grabbed one of the girls, and insisted that she wasn't allowed to see them. "It's Michael's custody day," Hannah snapped. Jennifer didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked confused, hurt, and tried to explain that she only wanted to hug her children and tell them they did well. Nearby, Evelyn, Jennifer's sister, watched the entire thing unfold. Michael, who had also come to the meet, stepped in to calm the tension. He told Hannah it was fine. "Let her hug the girls," he said. Reluctantly, Hannah agreed, but not without adding fuel to the fire. She pulled out her phone and began recording Jennifer. Evelyn immediately stepped forward. "Stop recording," she said, placing her hand in front of Hannah's phone. Hannah didn't stop. Instead, she slapped Evelyn's hand away. Evelyn warned her, "Don't touch me again." But Hannah escalated things. She grabbed Evelyn by the hair. Evelyn grabbed back. A physical altercation broke out right there beside the pool. Hair yanking, shouting, scratches, bleeding. Kids nearby cried. Other parents stepped in to separate them. Security called the police. Officers arrived minutes later and interviewed everyone involved. Evelyn had visible injuries, scratches under her eye, bleeding on her hand, some swelling. She was shaken but composed. She told the police exactly what happened. So did Jennifer. When it was Hannah's turn to speak, she became difficult. She refused to give her phone number, said she didn't have a phone, and claimed people only contacted her by email. That didn't make sense, especially since she had just been seen using a phone to record the confrontation. She also told officers a completely different version of events. According to her, she was simply trying to help one of the girls out of the pool when Evelyn attacked her unprovoked, spun her around, and started clawing at her. Hannah claimed she took her phone out to record the assault but couldn't be sure if she captured anything. Weren't buying it. Her story had holes. Then, during the chaos, an unidentified woman arrived at the scene. She claimed to be Hannah's attorney and told officers she'd send any evidence, including injury photos or statements via email, if Hannah chose to cooperate. That never happened. In the end, Hannah was charged with simple battery. Officers issued her a summons to appear in court. But she wasn't done. More than a month after the incident, Hannah filed for a temporary restraining order against Jennifer and Evelyn. She claimed they had assaulted and threatened her, not just at the swim meet, but also during a previous soccer game on March 17, 2021. She alleged that Jennifer grabbed her wrist, pulled her close, and said, "I will hurt you." She added that Evelyn had physically attacked her, kicked her, clawed at her, and pulled her hair. But the version of events she submitted in that restraining order application was different from what she had told police on the day of the swim meet. That contradiction mattered. When it went to court in August 2021, The judge saw through it. There was no supporting evidence, the timeline didn't add up, and the inconsistencies were too much to ignore. The request was denied. Still, the damage had been done, not just legally, but emotionally. The tension between Hannah and Jennifer didn't go away, it lingered. And so did something else, Hannah's resentment. Fast forward to April 25th, 2023, a Tuesday. Michael, a certified public accountant, was swamped. It was tax season, and he'd been working long hours at his office. That day, Bella and Aria's grandmother brought the girls to see their dad after school so they could spend a little time with him. They didn't stay long. After the visit, the girls were taken back to their father's home on Donnellan Drive, where Hannah was waiting. It was a typical drop-off. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Later that night, Michael came home, drained and overworked. He barely had time to eat before crashing on the couch. He fell asleep there in the living room, still in his work clothes. And when he woke up the next morning, everything had changed. It was Wednesday, April 26th. Around 7 a.m., Michael got up and realized something was off. Hannah was gone, and so was Bella. Aria was still in the house, unharmed and asleep. But Bella's bed was empty. There was no sign of movement in the house. Hannah's phone had gone silent. Michael tried calling her. No answer. He didn't wait long. At exactly 7:30 a.m., Michael walked into the Harahan Police Department and reported both Bella Fontanelle and Hannah Landon as missing. He explained that Aria was still at home, safe, but he hadn't seen Hannah or Bella since the night before. He'd assumed they were asleep in another room, but now, hours later, they were nowhere to be found. Police took the report seriously. Harahan wasn't the kind of place where people just disappeared overnight. It was a small, quiet suburb with a tight-knit community. Violent crime was rare. Homicide? Almost unheard of. Officers were dispatched immediately. Their first stop was Michael's house on Donnellan Drive. They searched the home, the yard, the surrounding area. Nothing stood out. No signs of a break-in. No clues, and no indication that something violent had occurred inside the home. So, they expanded the search. Just a few blocks away, officers made their way to Jennifer Zeledon's home on Sedgefield Drive, Bella's biological mother. They didn't expect to find anything there. It was supposed to be routine. But what they saw in the front yard changed the case instantly. It was one of the first things officers noticed when they arrived at Jennifer Zeledon's home on Sedgefield Drive. A large, white 10-gallon chlorine bucket sat awkwardly on the front lawn. It looked out of place, clean, almost too deliberately positioned. Jennifer stepped outside and immediately told officers that wasn't there yesterday. The officers approached it cautiously. One of them leaned down, gripped the lid, and slowly opened it. Inside was the lifeless body of 6-year-old Bella Fontanelle, curled in a fetal position, stuffed into the bucket like garbage. Her small frame was her body contorted to fit inside a container never meant for a human being. The scene was horrific. There was no doubt now. This wasn't just a missing persons case. This was a homicide, and it was deeply personal. As police pieced together what had happened, one question loomed. Where was Hannah Landon? They didn't have to look far. Just hours earlier, around midnight, Hannah had walked into the Harahan Police Department. Disheveled, blank-faced, she told the officers she had a family problem and asked to make a phone call. When asked to explain, she refused. "I don't want to talk about it," she said. She seemed disconnected, off-kilter, maybe even unstable. Rather than detain her, the officers called EMS and had her transported to a nearby hospital for a mental health evaluation. At the time, no one realized who she was or how important that visit would become. It wasn't until 2 p.m., after Bella's body had been discovered, that police made the connection. The woman who had wandered into the station hours earlier was Bunnock Hannah Landon, the last known person to be with Bella Fontanelle. By that afternoon, officers arrived at the hospital and placed her under arrest. She was charged with first-degree murder and 2 counts of obstruction of justice. And that phone didn't stay hidden for long. During a neighborhood sweep, detectives recovered the buried device. Once they gained access to it, the search history revealed something really disturbing. Hannah had been researching criminal defense attorneys before her arrest, likely before Bella's body had even been discovered. It was premeditated and calculated, and it painted a clearer picture of the mindset behind what had just happened. As the investigation unfolded, the Jefferson Parish Coroner's Office confirmed what many had feared. Bella Fontanelle died from manual strangulation and blunt trauma to the head.
Our preliminary cause of death, as determined by the forensic pathologist, is manual strangulation along with multiple blunt force injuries to the head. Child deaths are always terrible, especially ones like this that should not have happened.
She had been murdered inside her father's home, the very place where she should have felt safest. Detectives laid out the sequence. Bella was likely killed sometime on the night of April 25th, 2023. Then her body was placed into the bucket, loaded onto a wagon, and deliberately wheeled down the street by Hannah Landon, left on the front lawn of her biological mother's home. Every detail pointed to intent. Nothing about it felt impulsive. As the evidence stacked up, the legal process began. Hannah was indicted for first-degree murder and 2 counts of obstruction of justice. But things took a turn in May 2024, when her defense team requested a competency hearing. They claimed she was not mentally fit to stand trial. Initially, Judge Nancy Miller agreed. Based on early evaluations, Hannah was deemed incompetent. She was unable to assist in her defense or understand the nature of the proceedings. That decision didn't hold for long. Just 2 months later, 2 independent doctors from the Eastern Louisiana mental health system performed a more thorough evaluation. They reached a different conclusion. Hannah was competent. One of the original expert witnesses from the defense was unavailable to retestify, and had not re-evaluated her. That weakened the argument. Judge Miller reversed her ruling and set a trial date for December 2024, but Hannah's team tried to fight back. They filed an appeal to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal, hoping to reinstate the incompetency ruling. When that failed, they escalated to the Louisiana Supreme Court. That appeal was also denied. On February 25, 2025, the High Court let the lower court's ruling stand. Hannah would face trial. Her new court date was officially set for July 15, 2025, again before Judge Nancy Miller. The trial is expected to last 4 days, and this time, hopefully, there would be no more delays. The shock of Bella's murder rippled across Harahan like a tidal wave. At St. Matthew the Apostle School, where Bella was a kindergarten student, administrators moved quickly. Classes were canceled for the remainder of the week. Teachers, parents, and students were offered grief counseling. It wasn't just about academics anymore. It was about coping with something unimaginable. Bella's classmates were young, some too young to understand what had happened. Others left, asking heartbreaking questions no teacher was ready to answer. In response, the school hosted a mass in Bella's honor. Over 600 people attended: families, friends, neighbors, teachers, students, and members of the community who didn't even know the Fontenelle family personally. They came simply to show love and support.
I had a neighborly relationship with her. She was a great person. Every time I talked with her, I would stop for a few minutes and just have a nice little sweet conversation, tease the little girls a little bit, just to welcome her in the neighborhood. She was a single mother. She was trying to raise those kids correctly, and hardworking mother. Her parents visited quite often. I would see that. I would see them quite often playing in the front yard, and it was just a sweet thing to see.
Waking up to the unthinkable news.
I'm amazed. I just found out.
It was heart-wrenching to know that there was a possibility of a body being in there, which we found out later that it was.
Neighbors say they could never be ready to hear that the suspect was someone so close to the family. Hannah Landon, the girlfriend of the child's father who lives around the block.
Small community in Harahan. I mean, they've had a murder every 50, 60 years. It just doesn't happen. But it's, again, it just tells the story of it's the evil and the ugliness of people's hearts these days is everywhere.
Filled with anger and grief, the community tries to make sense of the horrific scene.
There is no more morality in this world. This is the final generation where people just don't care about anything but themselves.
Michael, Jennifer, Aria, and extended family sat in the front row. They greeted Bella's classmates after the service. Even in their unimaginable grief, they found the strength to be there for the children who were mourning alongside them. Bella Fontenelle was laid to rest on May 5th, 2023, and everyone who attended wore something red in her memory. A small but powerful tribute to a little girl who had left a lasting mark on every heart she touched. To this day, no official motive has been confirmed by law enforcement. As of now, Hannah Landon remains incarcerated at the Jefferson Parish Correctional Center. She's being held without bond and placed under suicide watch. Her charges haven't changed: first-degree murder and 2 counts of obstruction of justice. If convicted, she faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Prosecutors have confirmed they are not seeking the death penalty in this case. As we mentioned before, her trial is set to begin July 15th, 2025. Harahan wasn't prepared for something like this. If you've made it this far in the story, thank you. Bella's life mattered, and her memory deserves to be honored. What are your thoughts on this case? What do you believe truly drove Hannah Landon to do what she did? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you found this story important, like, share, and subscribe to help more people hear Bella's story.